President Trump officially signing an executive order designating Antifa as a domestic terror organization, all as the White House aims to crack down on the sources funding the group.
Okay, by now I'm sure you've heard the news that Antifa is officially considered a domestic terror organization. But did you know that people like Daniel Goldman, who's a member of Congress, he's claiming Antifa doesn't even exist. And there are other members of Congress who are also saying the same thing, that Antifa does not exist.
Former Antifa activist Gabriel Nadales joins me now. Thanks so much for being on the program.
Now, on my own YouTube channel, I literally cover Antifa almost every single day. And there are members, former members of Antifa who have come out and said, yeah, we do exist. Yet for some reason, there's this really big push to say that Antifa is not a real thing. So we're going to dig into and see whether or not Antifa is a real organization. And spoiler alert, Antifa does exist.
President Trump has promised he will directly address the dark sources funding and supporting this domestic terrorism to finally restore order in our country. The American people can expect further, very strong action on this very soon. Everyone, Republican, Democrat, everyone in between, we all deserve to live in a country where we do not have to fear for our lives simply for stating what we believe in.
Okay, before we get into the interview of the former Antifa member, I just want to show you guys, straight on the White House website, whitehouse.gov, this is a thing. Antifa is officially a terror organization. Now, in a separate video, I will be talking about what exactly this means really for Portland and Seattle, where you see a lot of Antifa. We'll talk about that in another video, so make sure to please subscribe to my channel so you guys can see that video, because I have some experts who have really been helping me out with this Antifa story.
It is unclear at this point exactly what this designation means legally. But, Gabriel, what are you hoping it means?
Well, you know, this is a long time coming, and I really hope that that Congress really follows suit and helps define what this means. But what some of these things means is that a lot of the self-described Antifa groups that are very localized, now we can actually call them legitimately domestic terrorist groups. And now there's a lot of ideas, or there's this idea that Antifa is merely an idea, and to an extent that is true, but Antifa is a very collective or a specified set of ideas that believes in political violence to enact its own political goals. That is literally the definition of terrorism.
Okay, so truth be told, we are in uncharted waters, because some people will say they're Antifa, others will also say they're Antifa, but they have different definitions as far as what they mean by Antifa. Because someone will say, yeah, I'm anti-fascist, then another person will say, yeah, I'm anti-fascist, but I'm also gonna use a stop sign to smash through this window to get into the ICE building. So you can see when it comes down to definitions, this already becomes an issue to try and identify who's the Antifa we're talking about.
Just an idea, it is literally the definition or the idea of terrorism itself.
When you first heard about this move from the White House, did you think, okay, this is to get the folks dressed in black on the ground that you see destroying communities? Or did you think more so, like I said in the introduction, this is to find the people funding Antifa?
So it's really interesting because Antifa has several different sources of funding. One of the ways that I remember for back in my day, a lot of people did have jobs and they were self-funded. But I do know that there's been several different, like, I'm not sure specifically, it's not GoFundMe kind of thing, but websites like GoFundMe that will set fundraisers for Antifa activists to get them out of jail.
Okay, so very recently on my own YouTube channel, over in Portland, we actually went through how the money is being generated and made as far as funding a 24-hour protest surrounding the ICE building. Now, it gets a little complicated. It's true. Some people have legitimate jobs. We know who they are in the videos I cover. Some of them are media members. Some of them are teachers. Again, I cannot say the names. And some of them, what they'll do is they will be homeless. Like, they are straight up homeless and will ask for money to help fund the protest. In exchange, they will get fed and they will be protected. So there are many different levels as far as how this works, but generally speaking, the point I'm trying to make is it's not like directly making money from donors. A lot of times it's just filming on TikTok and asking, hey, we need money, can you send like $20 for blankets? Imagine 100 different people ask for $20 here and there. You can make a lot of money if everybody works together to ask for money.
To do all of these things. I remember several years ago that you had Representative Ocasio-Cortez supporting people to donate to get bail people out of jail who were affiliated with Antifa. And there's also book author Mark Bray, who wrote the book Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook, who actually donates a proceed of his books to certain unnamed Antifa-esque organizations.
But hold on, I'm being told that there are no Antifa members. Give me a name of an Antifa member. I could give you probably like 20. I'm not going to do that. Again, maybe in the future sometime, but because I cover Portland so much, I want to protect the journalist and the story. So again, you're probably going to see members of Congress who keep saying, nope, this is not a thing, it's just an idea. You are hearing it straight from an ex-Antifa member. This is a thing. AOC has straight up said we need to help these people get out of jail. Again, coming straight from an ex-Antifa member on Fox.
So there is definitely a lot of different sources of funding from the grassroots level to a lot of different fundraisers and campaigns.
Do you think that this designation as a terror organization will force people to think twice about joining or funding Antifa? And I'm asking you this based upon your experience in this group, listening to the people, being alongside them. You think this slows Antifa down in any way, shape, or form?
Well, actually, I wrote about this on The Hill several years ago, I think maybe 5 years ago, that labeling Antifa a domestic terrorist organization would really have two effects. The first one is that it really will help law enforcement to really target some of these terror cells. But the second of all, it would be to a PR battle, because to an extent, Antifa continues to claim itself as the anti-fascist and like, oh, if you are against Antifa, you're pro-fascist. But that's nothing can be further from the truth.
So the reason why this situation gets a little more complex and a little more interesting for the Trump administration, this is a domestic terror organization. Now, I want to give you guys an example of how it works. Once you designate a group as a terror organization, this officially, legally opens up the floodgates to actually conduct strikes like we've seen over down in Venezuela, taking out those boats, or with the Houthis in Yemen. The second we designated the Houthis as a terror organization, overnight they were receiving strikes from the Biden administration and now obviously from the Trump administration. So this idea to designate a group as a terror organization also has a ton of legal implications and funding that goes into the counter-terror organizations that are in charge of investigating Antifa. Like, there are now going to be designated experts who may have to infiltrate into Antifa. So this is brand new for the Trump administration, brand new for the United States, how to figure out, now that they're a terror organization, we can't just use an F-16 to take them out. We're going to have to figure out what we're going to do here. Is this mostly PR? Is it legal? We don't really know yet.
To combat Antifa is to combat political violence, no matter where it comes from. Because to a certain extent, and actually to a great extent, whenever a lot of these Antifa activists, they are themselves the terrorists, they are themselves the fascists. So labeling them as such, as domestic terror groups, it really helps in the battle against Antifa in the PR realm, because it really shows them for what they are. They are a domestic terrorist movement.
Wow.
Gabrielle, before we let you go, why do you...
And that's where the definitions get weird, because if someone says, are you not anti-fascist? Are you an American? Yeah, I am. Okay, well then you are Antifa. But am I that type of Antifa? And again, that's where I think the complication is going to happen. Oftentimes when I make my videos, I refer to people you see in my videos as protesters and not straight up Antifa. This is because not everybody is Antifa. They are Antifa in the sense of ideology, but as far as claiming to specifically be the Antifa members we're seeing on TV, where they're trying to smash through windows, only a handful are that category of Antifa that we cover in my videos. Again, I am not going to say the names on my channel, but that's why I try to make a distinction between the Antifa members we're talking about here and the protesters who have the same ideology, but they don't go that hardcore. They don't actually affiliate, or they're not involved with that Antifa group to that extent.
Did you stop being an Antifa activist?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why, but I always talk about how I started reading about Thomas Sowell and Milton Friedman. I really kind of opened my mind, and as soon as I started talking to my friends about these ideas at the time, they started calling me a capitalist pig and all these other things. They started ostracizing me because I dared to ask questions when I was still a kid. I was like 17.
Okay, I'm sorry for cutting this off, but this does happen. We've actually seen it in real time on my videos, where Honey Badger Mom, a journalist that helps out my channel, she was attacked by these protesters, and another protester went over to help her, and they were ostracized. They were attacked on social media. So what he's saying is a big reason as to why people will leave Antifa or leave the outskirts of Antifa, because once you start to deviate from that idea of being able to be violent with your ideas, like, hey, you're not really Antifa, you're not a part of us, get out of here. We've seen that in real time on my YouTube channel.
And, that's kind of what opened my mind to see, like, well, what else is out there? So I started becoming involved in the liberty movement, and I slowly walked away from that. It was not a, overnight thing. It was a slow transition, but really that's some 10 years ago now.
I'd like to say that we're happy you're on the side of good, but, I'm pretty sure the Antifa folks won't be happy I said that. I'm just going to have to deal with that. Gabriel Nadales, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And look, 10 years ago, Antifa was Antifa, but they're a little more different today. Again, I never thought I would ever be talking about Antifa on my YouTube channel, but following them and how they operate with Portland, doing a lot of research into their organization and affiliates, it's rather complex how it all works. It's not like you have a head leader and we know that John is the leader, Gary is second in charge, Linda is third in charge. It's not quite like that, but there are indicators that you can point to that we know some people have a bigger level of influence than others. Again, I'm not going to point fingers or say names, but you guys have actually seen them before in my videos if you watch my Portland videos, and if you pay close attention, you will see the same people there over and over and over again, and the same people will always be watching the journalist, always be making a phone call, always be filming them. You guys see them, just make sure you're paying attention, make sure to subscribe, and if you look in the background, you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm being told the Trump administration actually references the story that we've been talking about, and you guys have helped the Trump administration actually see the story in Portland. So let's see if that's true or not during this press conference in which the Trump administration designated Antifa as a terror organization.
Questions, if I may, on the horrific murder of Charlie Kirk. Government and local officials said that Antifa inscriptions were engraved in these bullet casings that killed Charlie Kirk. It appears to be a trend, especially after what we saw in the Annunciation Church shooting, Catholic Church shooting. Additionally, Stephen Miller recently commented on the rise in this kind of violence, saying there is a domestic terrorist movement growing in this country. The president is designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. I'm wondering, what is the approach to holding these people accountable, just to ensure that violence like this just is eradicated?
And again, this is where it gets confusing, because some people will say, yeah, I'm Antifa, I am anti-fascist, but then you have the actual Antifa that President Trump and the Trump administration are talking about. The ones that go out of their way, create the forums, the websites, create the funding to try and disrupt federal operations or go out of their way to do some pretty bad things.
Forward.
Sure. Well, Antifa is going to be designated a domestic terrorist organization. The president intends to sign that executive order very soon as it's drafted, as soon as today, later this afternoon. And this is something the president campaigned on, because we have seen a rise in violence perpetuated by Antifa radical people across this country who subscribe to this group. And unfortunately, it's gone widely uncovered by many in the legacy media. It also went
100%. We've been covering the Portland story for 100 plus days in a row, and it wasn't until like day 82 the president finally was like, I had no idea this was happening in Portland. Again, thank you guys so much for your support and supporting my channel and the journalists who've been risking their lives every single day to be like, hey, President Trump, anyone, are you guys aware this is happening in Portland right now?
Completely ignored by the previous administration.
I don't even think MSNBC or CNN have done any special or talked about the 100+ day siege on the ICE building.
Not anymore. Not only, as you mentioned, were the bullet casings subscribed with Antifa mottos, if you will, in the heinous assassination of Charlie, but there have also been more examples than I could read off for you here in this briefing room today of violence from Antifa. I will just read a few. In July 2025, several members of an Antifa cell ambushed and opened fire on officers at an ICE facility in Alvarado, Texas, shooting one officer in the neck. Also in July 2025, 3 Antifa members were charged with assaulting a police officer during a violent riot outside an ICE facility in Portland.
That's the one. So that is when one person or 3 people decided to take a stop sign and slam it through the front door of the ICE building. Okay, so that's what she's referencing. And again, the President Trump's administration only is just now figuring this out or knowing this is all happening. I wouldn't be surprised if the National Guard ends up in Portland.
Which for weeks prior had been under siege from the local Antifa terror cell. In February 2024, a transgender Antifa terrorist detonated an explosive device outside of the office of the Republican Attorney General of Alabama. In July 2023, Antifa members linked to abortionist group Jane's Revenge firebombed pro-life facilities and vandalized churches. In January 2022, a suspected Antifa member was arrested for bringing a pipe bomb to a pro-Trump event. In January 2021, an Antifa supporter threatened to shoot police officers and Trump supporters outside of the Florida State Capitol building.
Wow.
Again, I could continue to list many more examples for those in the room who don't believe this is a serious threat to American safety and our national security, but this administration knows that it is. That's why the president will be signing this order. And we will also be, most importantly, looking at who is funding Antifa and who is funding these other violent left-wing groups that we've seen.
Yeah, that's going to be the big news. If they catch like 1 or 2 donors, some billionaire or organization that are funding these groups, man, that's going to be one of the biggest news stories maybe of our recent lifetime here. That's going to be massive. Okay, so this was more of an introduction into what exactly I want to talk about with Antifa. I just wanted to show you guys there are members of government, actual congressmen who are saying Antifa is not a real thing. Show me a name, show me evidence. So yeah, you guys can leave your comments down below how you feel about that. And again, one thing I do want to say is I do always advocate for peace on my channel. I want to make sure we do come together. We do not want violence. It's one thing to protest, but it's really bad when we start clashing and seeing those violent events. We don't want to see that. So thank you guys so much for everything. God bless, and we'll see you all later.